Hello. So I did an essay the other week, and when I was writing it, I was having like a really bad day because I had my art deadline due in the afternoon. I didn't spend the few hours before the essay revising because I was talking to this man that I met at college, like a supply teacher about communism the whole time, which is sort of relevant, but not relevant to um exactly what I had to write about in the essay. But yeah, I went into it. I was feeling really frustrated when I was writing it, and I thought maybe I pulled a C, maybe a B if I was lucky. But I actually came back as alright. I got a 36 out of 40, and it was near start. And I'm not just making the video to brag about that, but I'm obviously gonna put that in there. I'm basically gonna just read through it because I've got my development exam on the 18th of June, I believe. So less than a month, maybe like 3 weeks time. So I can listen back to my reading of this come the exam and hope that I get a question similar to this, and I think that'll be really beneficial. And obviously, maybe it'll help other people to revise liberation theology as well. So what I'm going to do is basically read through the essay from start to end and probably just end off there. Okay, so the question was, liberation theology is too Marxist to be Christian. Discuss. Right, yeah, so I'll just read through it. Liberation theology is a form of contextual theology which was developed in the 1960s. It originated in Latin America and come about due to the mass class divide, leaving a large proportion of society in absolute poverty, whilst a few elite individuals held the majority of the wealth. Already we can see a strong link to Marxism here, but it could be the case that Marxism is in fact fundamentally Christian with an apparent atheistic overlay. Marx was a materialist and wanted to implement physical changes in the world rather than just pondering philosophical ideas. He came into conflict with Bruno Bauer over Marx's desire to change and Bauer's inclination to think. Marx said philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point is to change it. This is reflective with his views on dialectical materialism and praxis. History is always changing, and we have the ability to understand the material world and therefore change it to create a fairer society, such as communism as he perceived it. Already we can see a strong link between Marxism and liberation theology because each perceived capitalism to be an oppressive structure whereby the bourgeoisie exploit the proletariat and cause them to become alienated from the work they complete. Perhaps it is important to explore ideas of liberation in the context of the Bible so we can establish whether liberation theology is merely a religious derivative of Marxism, or if there are legitimate reasons to act in accordance with a preferential option for the poor, which are prevalent in Scripture. Gustavo Gutierrez was one of the lead thinkers in liberation theology. He said, in the Bible, poverty is a scandalous condition, inimical of human dignity, and therefore contrary to the will of God. So what exactly leads him to make this bold claim? The Boch brothers managed to identify 5 theological motivations, which we can use to back up Gutierrez's claim about poverty being a scandalous condition. These 5 theological motivations were theological, Christological, eschatological, apostolic, and ecclesiological. Christ being one of the leading figures in Christianity, clearly had a preferential option for the poor. This is prevalent in the account of an old lady who gave a small amount of money to the pot and is praised by Jesus, whereas the rich who give large amounts of money are ignored. The moral of this story is that it is not how much you give, rather how much you keep for yourself. Another example which links to the eschatological motivation is the parable of the sheep and the goats. Those who give a glass of water to the thirsty and food to the hungry will go to heaven. The goats who did not end up in hell. Here it is obvious that there are biblical motivations for liberation theology outside of the doctrine of Marxism. So it doesn't necessarily make much sense to say that liberation theology is too Marxist to be Christian. Some have argued that some liberation theologians have used this form of contextual theology in order to fulfill their own political agenda. There are obvious reasons as to why people are opposed to liberation theology, due to the uncanny similarities with Marxism. The way in which Marxism was carried out in the Soviet Union led to totalitarianism and genocide. Christianity, being a pacifist religion, doesn't seem to fit well with Marxism in this sense. However, the Boff brothers said Marxism can be a friendly companion along the way. This is synonymous with Hegel's idea of sublation. Just because Marxism is not a perfect theory, we shouldn't throw it out as a whole, rather keep the good parts. For example, Marx seems to have outlined the problem of poverty. His solution was to use state intervention following from a violent revolution which would eventually lead to utopia. Liberation theologians have the ability to go out of their way and aid the poor, but in a non-restrictive manner, whereby equality is not forced by the state. However, it is possible that liberation theology could become more Marxist and be implemented on a state level. We can link back to the Boff brothers' 5 theological motivations to support this point. The ecclesiological motivation states that the Church should aim to transform society. This implies that liberation theology is not simply a religious movement, but has wider political motivations, making it too close to Marxism perhaps. But we could definitely make the case that Jesus was also a political liberator, and if Christians are supposed to follow the way of Jesus, then there is Christological motivation to implement political change which isn't necessarily contingent on Marxism. Helder Camara said, "When I offer food to the hungry, they call me a saint. But when I ask why poverty exists, they call me communist." Perhaps it's not that liberation theology is like Marxism, rather that Marxism is predicated on an underlying religious foundation. Marxism does seem to be synonymous with the Gospels due to the emphasis both place on liberation. However, paradoxically, Marxism seems to be inherently oppressive, whereas in Christianity, solidarity is a free act. People within the Catholic Church and other religious sects should willingly choose to submit themselves to a life alongside the poor and save reflection and thoughts for the night. As Gustavo Gutierrez said, theology rises at sundown. It doesn't make sense to say that liberation theology is too Marxist to be Christian, because Marx hated religion, calling it the opium of the masses, designed to make people submissive. Marxism seems synonymous with the New Testament, but fundamental differences such as the advocacy of a violent revolution make the two virtually incompatible. There is more to take from the Gospels about liberation than there is from Marxism, making it inherently Christian. Making liberation theology inherently Christian. Okay, so that's my essay. It's reading it back, I don't see why I hated it so much. Like, the comment that I put on the back after I finished my essay was, so we have like these sheets where we have to fill in like what we think we did well and stuff, and I wrote, don't know, I don't really like my essay, struggle to focus and maintain question focus, maybe incoherent. Do I think I met previous targets? I said no, revised a lot, but big problem gaining concentration. Think I managed to pull it back towards the end though. Okay, so during the essay, I couldn't concentrate at all. I don't know what was happening, but I think it was just because I was having a bad day, but I just couldn't concentrate, and I didn't feel like it was going well. But I did know at the time that from past experience, I've had difficulty concentrating, and I've had something where I've been writing an essay, and my head's been telling me it's really bad, but it's actually turned out good in the end. So I did keep on feeling like giving up when I'm writing the essay, but I decided just to push through it anyway, just expecting that I was probably wrong, even though at the time I knew that I was right about what I was writing being rubbish. Like that's what I knew, that's what I believed. But you know, I did consider the possibility that I was wrong and that I'd rather hand in something rather than nothing. Yeah, okay, that's it. I've finished. Okay. Thank you, bye.